I'm Dr. John Kruse, and today I'm going to be talking about getting back on track. It's not just people with ADHD. Now, people with ADHD are more prone to it. They're going to be doing it more often. Positive side of that is that means you'll have more experience and opportunities to practice getting back on track. Don't beat yourself up over that. Life is much more about whether you get back on track and whether you're ever diverted or led off track to begin with. Often people just feel stuck and overwhelmed. So the general concept of breaking a big task, of bringing, not even, and it may seem huge in size, but huge in complexity or overwhelming, is almost always breaking it down into smaller tasks, make it more manageable. So I call this well-armed approach, because it's A for awareness, R for remembering, M for motivation, ARM. You're well-armed, you're ready to deal with getting back on track. So the first part is awareness. You can't work on getting back on track unless you're aware that you're off track because of trouble sustaining, trouble switching, troubles maintaining focus. People with ADHD are going to have to work on awareness. Good that you might have awareness that you're off track, but if you can't remember what you should have been doing or what you're supposed to be doing or what you plan to be doing, then you're not going to be able to get back on track. So 1 is awareness, 2 is remembering, and then 3 is finding the motivation to resume whatever task you're supposed to be doing. I would actually recommend, in addition to scheduling and using your day planner or using your calendar or however you're using it, that when you begin a task that are taking 10 to 30 minutes or for an hour, that you say out loud, you could say it to yourself, but even stronger, you activate more brain connections and pathways, say it out loud, saying something like, from 3 to 3:30, I am gathering business receipts for my taxes. If you do that out loud, if you are mindful when you start, you are more likely to stay on track. You're more likely to remember it when you get off track. Practicing that simple technique of being more mindful when you're starting and make a conscious note of what you are doing, how long you're going to be doing it for, and sometimes even in what place you're going to be doing it in. For shorter tasks, this is useful too. So if you're in the middle of cooking and you go to do something, saying out loud, I am going to the refrigerator to get milk, or even internally repeating it, I'm going to the refrigerator to get milk, until you get it, is a way to maintain awareness of what the task you're doing or become more aware that you are diverted off track. The secondary mode of helping you with awareness you're being off track is using alarm systems. So there's things like the Pomodoro method, where you're doing a task for 25 minutes and then the alarm goes off to remind you you have time to take a break then. So any alarm system that's periodically asking you to, okay, check on what are you doing at this moment, is going to be a helpful tool. There are some situations where a visual reminder is also helpful. So I've had people put sticky notes when they begin. If you're gathering tax receipts, as we talked earlier, and typing them into the computer, to put a sticky note. From 3 to 3:30, you are putting tax receipts into your tax file. Practice these things. Don't expect to be immediately better. And know that part of how your brain works, if you have ADHD, makes some of these things more difficult. It doesn't make them impossible. You need to over-practice them to be as good as someone else at them. Second point was remembering what are you supposed to be doing. And here, the calendar is your friend. There's other videos in this sequence helping people overcome their aversion to using a calendar or scheduling their day. But if you have it written down and you know it's going to be on your calendar, even if you've completely forgotten, guess that. Announcement of Cloris Leachman's death, or the latest thing that QAnon conspiracy theorists came up with, is so amazing and ridiculous that you had to pursue it. Even if you're sucked into something compelling, if it's written down, you can figure out what you were supposed to be doing. Select it for your life goals. So it's matching what you're doing now with where you want to be. It's not forcing you to do something you don't want to do. It's not anything of the kind. It's lining up your activities with your life intentions. Third point is, okay, so I've become aware that I got off track. I now remember what I'm supposed to be doing, but that's just not very interesting or compelling in the moment. So What I often urge people to do, the most motivating thing is not shoulds or ought to or have to or you need to do it unless it's really, really big stakes, like your house is on fire, you should get out of it quickly because your life depends on that. What motivates people is what they want to do and what they like doing. So if on your calendar, when you write down what the task is, if you also put a word or two. So, doing taxes, unless you're a CPA, is usually not anyone's favorite, most fun thing to do. But if you're motivated to do it, if you like to do it because you don't like paying the IRS fees and penalties like you did the last 3 years, or you don't like having 17 years of taxes unpaid and wondering when the IRS is going to come up and slap a lien on your belongings. It's easier when you're putting it on the calendar to remember why you might want to do it or why you might like to do it. When you're sitting and planning, it's easier to drum that up, to conjure that up, than when you're in the middle of it and it seems boring or stretching on interminably. The other piece of that, other than getting in touch with the likes and the wants and writing them down, is reminding yourself you haven't scheduled the next 17 days to do this. I mean, even if the tax preparation itself may be 7 or 8 more steps, what you've scheduled right now is just a short, finite 20 minutes, maybe an hour of activity on a specific activity. And if you've worked on figuring out what your attention span is and know it, then if I actually set this task up for 25 minutes, I can do it. This is doable. Knowing that it's doable, knowing that it's possible, knowing it's within your capacity decreases the amount of motivation you need to do it. You don't have that fear or feeling built in. There's no way I can sit here for a half hour and do taxes. This is simplistic, but a lot of people don't have a clue how long they can sit down and do work for. So the way to find that out is start with a arbitrary guess as to how long you can work at them at one time and put a timer when you start. See how long you go before you get off track. Write that down. Try it a couple different times of day, different starting points. Measurably, most people, even with ADD, can extend their attention span. Upper limit, most psychologists would put it a reasonable amount for any task would be 90 minutes is sort of the far end of before almost anybody's attention lags on a task. And more often, breaking things into 25-minute, 30-minute chunks is more manageable. Another reminder or a tool to have, in one way, helps with the motivation or helps decrease the motivation to go on to those other more distracting things. Keep a list of paper, or if you're particularly handy with your phone, and have it set up so that you're not going to get sucked into more additional distractions. Have the notepad or other function handy. So if distractions come up, if you write it down, then you decreases the motivation to pursue it right away because it's there. I'm not going to forget it. One of the ways to stay mired in the distracted off-track state is to beat yourself up and feel shameful, feel guilty, feel you're stupid or bad, or you shouldn't have done it, or you should have learned by now, or you should know by now. But the bottom line is all humans get off track. What's important is trying to get back on track, and negative emotions almost always create bigger barriers to getting off track. So there may be value in analyzing the situation at some point in the future, or going over it in therapy, or journaling about it, exploring the sources of negative emotions. But in the moment, it's almost always more useful to say, okay, I feel bad about it. I got off track, but my goal is to get back on track. So again, the 3 big steps are awareness of being off track, remembering what you were supposed to be doing, and motivating yourself to get back on track. I hope this has been helpful in a practical sense. So have a good week, have a happy Groundhog's Day, and stay safe and sane.